From the four corners of Beverly Hills, I'm Max Schwartz. This is Let's Talk Politics, and it starts right now. Today, as my in-studio guest, I have Chairman of the Los Angeles County Democratic Party, Mr. Chairman Eric Bauman. Thank you for joining me today, Mr. Chairman. It's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Glad to be here, Max. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. And we were off for the month of April because of Open House, and I'd like to thank everyone that watched KBEV 6's 41st annual live Open House special. And I would like to apologize for my volume on that. I was loud due to the fact I was excited and I had people talking in my ear, my director and technical director, all evening, but that's nothing against them. And as Dr. Goldberg pointed out, I will be attending the University of Southern California's Annenberg School for Communication and Journalism in the fall. Now, without further ado, because I'm excited to be here, and unfortunately we only have a handful of shows left, I can count them, let's talk politics. So how did you become chairman of the Los Angeles County Democratic Party?
It all happened the day I lost my mind. 12 years ago, the elected members of the Los Angeles County Democratic Central Committee elected me to be their chair. I have since been reelected 5 times, and I fear I'm up for reelection one more time in July. It happened after years of political activism that began primarily around the issues of healthcare reform, my having served as appointee of President Clinton's, later on Governor Davis's, and I've been here ever since.
Okay, and I'm going to talk about Governor Davis and healthcare reform later on as we get further into the politics, but more about the background of yourself and the party. Is the party like a corporation in that it has a president and a CEO, or is the chairman the head man?
So the way the party is structured, first of all, what most people don't realize is that every county across California has an elected county central committee. The members of the county central committee, which is the governing body of the Democratic Party in that county, are actually elected on the primary ballot. And then from amongst those members, they elect a chairman. In Los Angeles, we have 7 countywide officers. 6 of them are elected, 1 is appointed. We hire an executive director who runs the day-to-day operation. That's because we have a big operation here. I mean, this is a multi-million-dollar operation in Los Angeles. Many counties in California, obviously, that's not the case. So, and in fact, we have a staff of 5 here in Los Angeles. As the chair, I am technically the chief executive officer of the organization, although I vest much of that authority in the executive director in terms of running the day-to-day operations.
Okay. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you're not here full-time. You're not there 100% of the time. Is that correct?
I wear multiple hats in my life. You may not know, I'm the vice chairman of the California Democratic Party. I got elected in 2007 to that role. You know, that's an additional role that I have. And I also run all of the operations in Southern California for the California State Assembly Speaker. So I have 3 different points on my head, all of which have a hat.
Okay. Very good saying. I haven't heard that one here on Let's Talk Politics before. And I would like to make a note on the primary. By the time this is on TV, you should have all received your your absentee ballots for the June 5th primary if you signed up for one. So I encourage you to please vote in this election. Again, we have a big problem with voter turnout here, especially from the young people. So I encourage everyone to go out and vote, and we're going to talk about that more today. But please, on June 5th, go out to vote. It's the presidential primary. You've got senator up for senatorial primary, you've got your state assembly member primary, and all these are interesting because it's an open primary this year. Anything can happen. And also Congressman Waxman, and he doesn't have a real fight.
So anybody who's listening, who's 18 or who will be 18 within 30 days of Election Day, can go to www.lavote.net, that's the LA County Registrar of Voters, and sign up to request a vote-by-mail ballot. Voting by mail is a terrific way to do it because it guarantees you don't have to get out and stand in a line on Election Day, but your voice will be heard.
Okay, and I'm going to talk about voter by mail ballots as well because there's interesting points about those, especially have been noted in some of the local elections where the turnout's much lower. But going back to the party for a moment, how much influence does the Los Angeles County Democratic Party have in the California Party and with the DNC?
Well, let me put it to you this way. 40% of all Democrats in California are right within 50 miles or so of where we're sitting.
Okay.
The LA County Democratic Party is the largest local Democratic Party in America. We represent nearly 2.3 million Democrats.
Okay.
We are an extraordinarily large force in California politics, and quite frankly, we assert ourselves well beyond the borders of Los Angeles and, frankly, at a national level because I engage in a lot of of activities outside of California as well. The way the whole Democratic Party structure in California is, as opposed to the Republicans where everybody's appointed, all of our bodies or all of our structures are elected in California. And from the members of the LA County Democratic Party, we have 233 slots on the state Central Committee.
Okay.
So we are the largest individual block at the state level as well.
Okay.
More than 10% of the total body.
And you say 2.3 million Democrats. How many registered voters are there in the Los Angeles County region?
There are about 4 million, but for perspective, there are 2.3 million Democrats, there are 1 million Republicans, and there are just shy of 1 million declined to states. So there are more Democrats in Los Angeles County than there are declined to state or no party preference or independent, whichever word you choose, and Republicans combined. This is amongst the bluest places in America.
Yeah. And that's one thing that we discussed here with Vice Chairman Amanoff of the Los Angeles County Republican Party. And one thing that's interesting to know is talking about open primaries. That's not going to matter in the primary because you can vote for whatever candidate you want in now the state of California.
So Max, let me just help educate you and your listeners about what this primary is. This is not an open primary.
Oh.
This is what's called the top two primary. And there's a very big difference. In an open primary, anybody can vote for any candidate they want, but there's still a nominee for each party. In the general election.
Okay.
This is called the top two primary because if two Democrats run against each other, or if two Democrats or two Republicans are the top two voters, come November, two Democrats or two Republicans will be what's on the general election ballot. So it's a little bit different than an open primary. What we had in 1998 that the Supreme Court threw out was an open primary. This is what's called the top two primary. All in all, this is probably a lousy experiment in governance. It's designed to, it's ultimately designed to cost the Democratic Party a lot of money because there are going to be many races across the state where it's Democrat against Democrat, very few where they're Republican against Republican, just because California is such a Democratic state.
Yes, and I apologize for I was using the open primary term because that's how it was on the ballot 2 years ago. And I assume that it was open because if you're Democrat, you can vote for Republican and vice versa if you choose.
Proposition 14 was a top two primary. That's what it's called.
Okay.
I want everybody to know that because there is such a thing as an open primary. We had it in this state, and it's a little bit different because you still have a nominee of the party. And one of both the Democratic and Republican parties' biggest arguments against this form of election is the fact that other people choose our nominee, and we don't even get now to have a nominee.
Yeah. And you bring up a point about having two Democrats on the ballot, which is going to cost a lot of money, and I wanted to bring that up, which is I've talked to many people that are involved with Democratic campaigns, and some believe that this is shooting the Democratic Party in the foot because ultimately, if in merged districts, you're going to end up losing one Democrat possibly from the House of Representatives and so forth, and also because there are two Democrats there may be two Democrats in one race, it's going to cost the party, like you said, a lot of money. So what is your party, and your party because you're the head man, but what is the Los Angeles County Democratic Party going to do if there are two Democrats on the ballot? How are they going to choose who to support?
Well, so to begin with, we have a very extensive process that leads to our endorsements, and the Democratic Party in this state has always endorsed in primary elections. It's nothing new, and we've endorsed in this election. So in most races, not all, because not in every race did we get to it, because we require a supermajority of our delegates, of our state delegates, to get to an endorsement. So, for example, in the race for the say Berman and Sherman, who are running against each other for Congress, there is no endorsement.
Okay.
Right? Neither, although Brad Sherman got more votes, neither candidate hit the 60% threshold that was necessary. But in the Assembly District in which Beverly Hills High School sits, which is the 50th Assembly District, and where you have three primary candidates, you have Betsy Butler, incumbent member of the Assembly, you have Tori Osborne, who's an activist and nonprofit leader from Santa Monica, and you have Richard Bloom, who's on the City Council in Santa Monica. The Democratic Party endorsed Betsy Butler.
Okay.
So Betsy Butler is the officially endorsed candidate of the Democratic Party, and if a voter looks at their voter guide, one of the few good things about Prop 14 is there's actually a page inside that voter guide that lists all of the officially endorsed candidates of the Democratic Party.
Okay.
Now, if our endorsed candidate makes it into the runoff or makes it into the general election, they will still be the endorsed candidate.
Okay.
If our endorsed candidate didn't make it, or if we don't have one, we will have another process later in June to try to endorse a candidate.
Okay. And you brought up Berman versus Sherman, which is, I think, the keynote example of what will be Democrat versus Democrat, and it's arguably the most competitive congressional election in the union at this point in time. But in that case where no one was endorsed, does that mean the LACD, Los Angeles County Democratic Party, won't help any of the candidates or either of them?
No, it means we don't have an officially endorsed candidate, and our members and our activists are participating in both campaigns depending on who their choice is. And let me make one other point about this June's election. We've talked a lot about the impact of this top 2 primary, which came from Proposition 14. But at the same time that that's happening, we're also running in brand new districts. So that the reason that Brad and Howard, for example, are running against each other is because their districts were drawn into each other.
By the independent commission.
By the independent commission that drew the districts. So these two arguable reforms occurred at the exact same time, redistricting and this new type of primary, which, by the way, the media refer to this top 2 primary as they call it a jungle primary.
Yes.
And you will commonly hear it referred to as that. So you have this double whammy of redistricting, which is changing the shape and nature of the districts and pitting incumbents against each other. And you have this top 2 primary, which means that in a case like Howard and Brad, they may run against each other again in November.
Yeah. And most believe that that will be the likely scenario, because
that is a very possible scenario.
Those were 2 Democratic districts that were formed to one, and one of the Republican candidates in that is actually lost, I believe, to Brad Sherman. It was before. But do you believe this redistricting and or this top 2 primary is shooting the Democratic Party in the foot, for the lack of a better term?
Well, I think they were both designed by people who wanted to see the Democratic Party waste a lot of money.
Oh.
The Sacramento Bee did an analysis when Proposition 14 was on the ballot back in 2008. And it might have been 2010, I'm forgetting now.
2010, yeah.
And they did they did a retro analysis of the June 2008 primary election. And what they determined was, had that primary been run under today's rules, under the Prop 14 rules, there would have been 16 races where it was Democrat versus Democrat in November, and 1 race where it was Republican against Republican. The people who financed this measure did it for a reason, and that was to try to drain money from the Democratic Party, because the Republican Party in California is dying. Okay, it is barely above 30% of the total electorate in California today. Okay, it has dropped 7 points in the last 8 years, whereas the Democratic Party continues to be at about 44%. We've actually regained strength in the last few years.
Yeah.
So Republicans are going down, independents are going up, the Democratic Party is basically holding steady. And as you could see from the outcome of the elections in 2010, the voters of California, by and large, think and act like Democrats, and they vote for Democrats.
Yeah.
We faced a $165 million juggernaut with Meg Whitman and Carly Fiorina in the 2010 elections, and yet we won every single race up and down the ticket. We even elected an attorney general, by the way, an exciting attorney general, but one who was anti-death penalty, something California has never done before. And what that speaks to is the fact that the people of California have a progressive mindset. They have a progressive political mindset.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why, I don't have the slightest bit of doubt that President Obama is going to carry California by probably 15, 20 points.
Yes, and people believe that Obama does have California in the bag, and you bring up a good point about Ms. Harris, and people are saying she's an up and rising star of the Democratic Party. But do you believe that the people that you say that put these 2 initiatives on the ballot to drain money from the Democratic Party, do you believe that will actually happen, or is that happening as a result?
Of course it's happening, and we're going to see it happen again in November. Look, when you look at, remember, there's 80 assembly races, 53 congressional races, and 20 Senate races all on the ballot. And most of the tension and excitement and drama are in Democratic districts. There are a few where there's Republican against Republican. It's not too much of that going on.
Yeah.
The other thing is that, look, Republicans are more disciplined than Democrats in terms of how they do their politics, how they run their elections. They're a lot more likely to say to people, get off the ballot, don't file and run.
Yeah.
The Democratic Party isn't really good about that. And, clearing the field is a very difficult thing to do when you have a progressive mindset that's inclusionary. And our politics as Democrats is inclusionary. We want as many people to participate as possible. So it's not really like us to try to strong-arm people out of races. And therefore, we're going to end up with a lot of November races where we have Democrat against Democrat.
Yes, and you bring up the 2 cases with Sherman versus Berman in the Valley and the 50th Assembly District, which may very well be Democrat versus Democrat. But I want to go back, and you talked about the Goodell. Yeah. That's what everyone believes, but we'll wait and see until June. I want to go back on what you talked about the delegates, and the convention in which the delegates were sent was in February 2010 for the
Correct.
California Democratic Convention.
2012.
I'm sorry, February 2012. Thank you, my mistake. How did that go for the Los Angeles County Democratic Party?
Look, I mean, it was a little early for us. It was an exciting convention. There were lots of endorsements to make. Some people don't think the party should endorse. Others do. I happen to believe it's the way the party helps put its brand on its candidates. Mm-hmm. Sometimes your candidate that you support and endorse doesn't win. You know what? As Democrats, we turn around the next day and we support the candidate who's left standing. That's the way it works. We're a strong party. Mm-hmm. But we had a great convention. It was an exciting convention. And this is going to be a great year for Democrats in California. I don't have any doubt about that.
Okay, very good to note from your perspective. And
I would wager you a glass of lemonade, since I don't think you can buy me a single malt scotch. I would wager you a glass of lemonade this is going to be a good year for Democrats in California.
As an impartial TV host, I'm not going to comment on that, nor am I a wagering man. So
I can't even get a lemonade out of you.
No, I don't wager.
All right.
I'll leave that to...
Your principal will be very happy to hear that.
Yes, thank you. And as we spoke about with Vice Chairman Amanoff, we are in a blue state, and we're in a very blue region of the state. How is that working to your advantage, and what is it like running the majority party?
Well, you know, we have a compelling mix of objectives as Democrats in California. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we are desperately trying to get to a 2/3 majority in both houses of the legislature.
Because that's ultimately what you need to pass things.
That's ultimately what we
bills.
need for any supermajority legislation and to pass the ability to raise new revenues for the state of California, which we also desperately need if you heard the governor's press conference. But that said, besides that battle to get to 2/3 in the Senate and the Assembly, and we're on track to do it in the Senate. The Assembly is a much tougher lift this year, but it's certainly within reach in the next couple of years. We're also trying to add as many additional congressional seats as possible to help Nancy Pelosi become the Speaker again. Mm-hmm. Look, there's only 25 seats that Democrats need to pick up all across the country in order to take back the House of Representatives.
Okay.
The House of Representatives approval rating under Speaker John Boehner is 9%. Mm-hmm. 9%. That's a third of what it was under Speaker Pelosi. Now, I never thought 27% was something to brag about, but when your successor's approval rating is 9%, mm-hmm. that tells you something. So we're trying to win as many congressional seats additionally as we can, and we have some excellent targets here in California that we think we're going to pick up and give Pelosi another 2 or 3 seats at least. Mm-hmm. Then, of course, we want to make sure that President Obama carries the state as big as it's possible. But here's what the key is. Our activists and our donors and our political leaders will work California, we'll turn out what we need to do in California, but we're going to help in Nevada, New Mexico, Pennsylvania, Ohio, all Arizona, all of the battleground states that will determine who the next president of the United States is. Mm-hmm. You know, people are shocked to find out that in Arizona, the race between Obama and Romney is 1 point.
Yeah, it's extremely close.
In Colorado, President Obama is ahead, but it's close. In Ohio, President Obama is ahead, but it's close. In Pennsylvania, President Obama is ahead, but it's close. Well, our activists can go to those states and help make sure that he wins those states. Yes. Or they can work right here in California and call into those states. Well, that's what we do because we have the luxury of knowing that come Election Day, President Obama will win California. Yeah. And, of course, we want to work and push up his margin, mm-hmm. but we're going to help in those places too. But let me tell you one other thing we have. For years, conservatives have tried to figure out how to take money away from labor unions because labor unions substantially fund the efforts of Democrats.
Yeah.
And twice before they put what they used to call a paycheck protection initiative on the ballot. Twice we've beaten it. Once was Prop 75 under Governor Schwarzenegger. It was on the ballot in June of 1998, the same year that Governor Davis got elected. Each time we fought back and we've said to the public, look, you're applying this to working men and women who are members of unions, but you're not applying this to corporations. Yeah. So they came up with a scam. They said, well, the same rules that will apply to unions will apply to corporations. We will not allow political contributions to be withheld from employees' paychecks, either from the union or from the corporations. Well, it sounds like it's the same, doesn't it? Except that corporations don't pay for their political activity from out of their employees' paychecks. They pay for it out of their profits. And that's untouched.
Yeah.
And under the Citizens United decision by the Supreme Court, corporations can spend as much money as they want on campaigns.
And that was the downside of the Citizens United, is because it created the super PAC. I'm sorry, that was the downside of the McCain-Feingold legislation, is that it created the super PACs, which are now essentially buying elections.
Correct. Correct. And you can really see it. I mean, if you watch the Republican presidential primary, it was a fascinating study because each time one of the candidates would pop up and start to do well,
they'd have a new sugar daddy, quote unquote.
All of a sudden, though, Romney would have millions of dollars poured in from an outside PAC, uncontrolled contributions, unreported contributions, and they would beat that person, that candidate, whether it was Gingrich or Santorum, it didn't matter, Michelle Bachmann, it would just beat them back down into a hole in the ground. I mean, it's crazy.
And Sheldon Adelson pledged to give $100 million, and I believe he actually did to Newt Gingrich's campaign.
He didn't give quite that much, but he gave over
or
$20
to the
million.
super PAC.
He gave over $20 million.
$20 million
directly.
But he pledged $100 million. That's just the point, that it now went. It changed it from a few $1,000s these corporations and these people can give to infinity, quote unquote.
Which is why it's so specious when you hear Romney attack President Obama because he comes to Los Angeles and raises, somewhere between $15 and $20 million in a single night. Well, he was able to raise that kind of money because there are people here in California who believe in him, who believe in his agenda, who believe in the things he's doing, from bringing our troops back from Iraq to implementing universal health care as we move along, to supporting the rights of same-sex couples to get married. I mean, and that's why he raised that kind of money. But for them to argue that, oh my God, he should be doing his job, not hobnobbing with the stars, I have news for you. What most people don't realize is most of that money was raised in small increments. Over $15 million was raised in online contributions as part of a contest. Those were small contributions.
Yes, because they were raffling off the tickets for about $3 or something like that. And I will say, for those of you that saw my airport documentary of covering President Obama's landing on February 15th, I hope you enjoyed that. I apologize, it's very loud. I've heard complaints that it was loud, but there were 4 airplane engines and 2 helicopter engines in front of me. But I was able and had the tremendous honor to be part of the White House press pool on May 11th. May 11th? Yes, I believe that's the day he came in. May 10th, I'm sorry, Thursday, May 10th. So there will be another documentary about that, and that was very exciting. It's going to be slightly different, so stay tuned for that. I want to talk to you about what you mentioned earlier about going to help in the swing states and those where it's very close. What does your party do to work with state parties of other states and county parties of counties in other states?
Well, let me give you one unusual for instance. In Wisconsin, there's an incredible recall campaign going on right now.
Is it for their governor?
Governor Walker and the Republican-controlled Senate took away the rights of working men and women to bargain collectively.
Yeah, they got rid of the unions.
They got rid of the unions. They banned them. And the people of Wisconsin rose up, and over 1 million people signed petitions to recall Governor Walker. By the way, he only got elected by 1.1 million votes. So with 1.1 million votes, 1 million people signed petitions to recall him. And that election is just in 2.5 weeks. Is coming up shortly. I'm not sure when this is going to air.
Yeah.
But what's incredible about that is we've had the chair of the Wisconsin Democratic Party out here. We did a number of events with him. We helped them raise some money. We helped them get volunteers to go to Wisconsin to help. This is an incredible thing. The Democrat who's running against Governor Walker is within just a couple of points in that race. We can win that, and if we win that, it sends a message all across America. Republicans, beware, you cannot take advantage of working men and women. And that's what this election is all about. And by the way, that's the reason Barack Obama is going to be reelected, because it's working men and women who are suffering and struggling. And the solutions that Mitt Romney and the Republican Party are offering is cut the taxes on the rich while they do nothing for regular everyday people. It didn't work under George Bush 1. It didn't work under George Bush 2. The success that we've had in the economy happened under Bill Clinton when he was president, and the turnaround that we're now seeing under Barack Obama. And it's by requiring all people to participate in the process, everybody to pay their fair share, that we have in America that's for all of us.
And jobs have been created under President Obama, and I know people are arguing that, but that's a clear fact. And you bring up President Obama, and I'm going to ask the hard questions now, as I've been telling everyone that once we have the party leadership here, we will be asking the hard questions. So one of my first questions is, President Obama has.
He's a citizen of the United States. He was born here.
Yes, I think it is all at this point, or most people believe that he was in fact born here. But he did propose military spending cuts, and there were some people that all went up in arms over this, saying it was threatening our national security. Now, do you believe that, as an individual, and does the party believe that these cuts would have jeopardized our national security? And what is your comment on that?
Let me start by saying that despite all of George Bush's rhetoric, it was Barack Obama's team who caught and killed Osama bin Laden. It was Barack Obama's team who brought our troops home from Iraq and who's bringing our troops home from Afghanistan. We have spent trillions and trillions of dollars engaged in these wars, and it's time to bring it to a close. That doesn't mean that America's fighting forces are not going to be ready to fight anywhere in the world. Of course they are. That's the plan. Our two-nation, two-war strategy hasn't changed. The fact that we're using new technologies, we're using drones, we're doing different things, and hopefully reducing the size of the military, that's a good thing for our country. I think most Americans support that. But look, there's an old story, and it really applies to Barack Obama. Barack Obama was out on the lake in a boat fishing, and there's another boat down across the water, and he sees a guy fall out into the water. He steps over the side of his boat, and the president walks over, picks the guy up, puts him back in his boat, walks back across the water, and gets back in his boat. Next day, the headline says Barack Obama can't swim. It doesn't matter what President Obama does. The people who hate him, the people who despise him, the people who don't like him will criticize anything he does any day of the week.
Yes. And again, no comment on that as being an impartial TV host. But
I'm not impartial. You brought me here. I'm the chairman of the party.
I know.
What I do is explain things from a democratic perspective, from a progressive perspective, from a perspective that puts everyday people first.
And that's one thing that we've discussed on the show before with other guests, is that, and with Congressman Waxman, is that if President Obama says one thing, the Republicans will say the exact opposite. And the Republicans and many people are, especially Republicans, are questioning Obama's passage of health care, as you brought up. Now, some believe that this, in fact, he didn't pass it properly or was, quote unquote, ramming it down the Republicans' throats. But what do you have to say on the passage of...
You know, I have to step back for a second. Medicare Part D, which was passed under George W. Bush, was passed in overt and direct violation of congressional law. They held the roll open for 6 hours to get the final vote so that they could pass that bill that had a $6,000 donut hole in the middle of it and a multi-billion-dollar giveaway to the drug companies. The Affordable Care Act, which President Obama passed, is an incredible piece of compromise legislation. Does it go as far as most Democrats would like? No, because most of us believe in single payer. Most of us think that Medicare for all is the solution to health care. But that said, today, if you have diabetes or cancer or AIDS, they can't say you can't get insurance because you have a pre-existing condition. Today, if God forbid you have cancer and your treatments cost hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, they can't throw you off because you hit your maximum. Your parents can keep you on their insurance until you're 26 years old. That's all part of the Affordable Care Act. Screenings for cervical cancer and uterine cancer and breast cancer and prostate cancer is free and mandatory now under the Affordable Care Act. And that's what President Obama passed. The funny thing about Obamacare is that the Republicans did such a good job of denigrating it and making it into this terrible thing that when you say Obamacare to people, they have a negative reaction. But when you talk about any of the component parts of it, they support them wholeheartedly, overwhelmingly.
And I think that goes back to the lack of general understanding, which means because you need the individual mandate for the whole bill to work. And we're going to wait and see what the Supreme Court has to say on this, and their decision should be out at the end of June. And I'm assuming that your party has endorsed President Obama, if they're allowed to?
We have not officially done so.
Okay.
The party does not endorse until somebody is nominated.
Oh, okay.
We endorse our nominee. In every other race we endorse, not in the presidential race. We will nominate President Obama in September, right after Labor Day in North Carolina at the National Convention, and he will accept at the Bank of America Stadium in North Carolina in front of thousands of people live and millions of people worldwide. And this will be an incredible happenstance because this will be only the second time that an African American is nominated to be the President of the United States. And in November, it's going to be the second time ever that an African American is elected President of the United States.
So, yes, and again, I'm going to be impartial on that.
You're being impartial. I don't have to
I
be.
know, I know, I know. But as part of my role as the impartial TV host, I'm going to say I'm impartial. And one last question, because people are starting to leave as school's ended, and it's been a pleasure, is what is your county party doing to get young people involved in politics and get out to vote? Because like I said, we have an extremely large problem of low voter turnout, especially with the young people, and we have a lot of people who just don't understand. What is your party doing to fix that?
You know, this is actually a terrific question. Look, if you look at voters, young voters are Democrats. Even if they register as independents, they think and vote like Democrats. Why? Because young voters believe in people. They believe that the government is a tool of good, that whether it's helping with college tuition and college loans, or health care, education, environment, fighting global climate change, ending the wars, these are all Democratic positions. The LA Democratic Party has had a focus on young voters for many, many years. Last year, we were trying to figure out how do we get those young voters who registered and voted for the first time in the Obama election of 2008, how do we get them out in 2010? Well, I hired an artist from Marvel Comics to do a vote-by-mail piece that was specifically designed at voters under 30.
Oh.
That piece of mail that we designed won the Gold Poly for vote-by-mail, the #1 mail piece in America. And that's how good that campaign was. And we used it to reach thousands and thousands of young voters. We're active. We're active with the Democratic clubs that are on the college campuses all across Los Angeles and beyond. We're active with where there are high school chapters for the Democratic Party, and we make it a point to ensure that we have young activists moving into leadership roles all the time. We have training programs for them because, let's face it, if I come in and talk to your class, I'm a politician, okay? As you can tell from talking to me, I do this every day. But if I can teach you or your classmates who don't have to be nonpartisan like you do, to go out and do this, the message is so much more resonant, one peer to another, one young person to another. And by the way, we fully support the California Young Democrats and the California College Democrats in their mission.
Okay.
Because that is the way we're connecting with young people.
Okay. Thank you very much for that, and thank you very much for coming on Let's Talk Politics today. I appreciate it. It was a pleasure. Beverly Hills, thank you very much for watching. Let's Talk Politics with me After Hours starts right now by calling 424-253-4MAX. You can also tweet me at Max Schwartz TV. You can send an email to the Let's Talk Politics inbox on at ltpon6@gmail.com, and you can also comment on my blog, maxschwartztv.blogspot.com. Thank you, Beverly Hills, for watching. I will be back next week with Gary, Indiana's Mayor, Karen Freeman Wilson. Thank you very much.